The first thing Kaito Tanaka did, with the impossible clarity of a life lived twice, was take a pen to his university application form. Next, he gathered the yen he had scrimped and saved for 6 long months and made a straight line for the town post office. "A word, if you please," he said, sliding a thick wad of bills and a counterfeit acceptance notice across the counter to the clerk. "In 1 week, a young woman will come asking for my notice from the university exams. I need you to give her this one instead." 10,000 yen in 1965 was a small fortune. The clerk's eyes widened, his gaze darting around the empty post office before his hesitation melted and his fingers closed around the envelope. A week later, Kaito collected his real acceptance notice. He didn't leave. Instead, he found a spot in the shade of a ginkgo tree across the street and waited. He didn't have to wait long. Less than half an hour later, a gleaming black Toyota Crown, a car worth more than his family's entire house, pulled up to the curb. Ayako Tachibana emerged, her posture as sharp and elegant as the expensive dress she wore. Trailing just behind her was his brother, Naoki. Kaito's fingers dug into the rough brick of the wall behind him, scraping his knuckles raw. He hadn't known. In his last life, a life that had ended in ruin, he never knew that Ayako herself had come, with Naoki in tow, to personally orchestrate his downfall. "Hello. I'm here to pick up the acceptance notice for Kaito Tanaka." Ayako's voice was as cool and steady as ever. The clerk gave them a knowing glance and passed over the forged notice. Naoki took it, his eyes shining with a light Kaito now recognized as pure avarice. "Ayako-san," Naoki said, his brow furrowed in a display of false concern. "Are you sure about this? Is it fair to Kaito-ni? He wanted to go to university so badly, he stayed up studying every single night." Ayako gently patted Naoki's shoulder, her expression softening with a tenderness she had never once shown Kaito. "Your brother wants to be with me more than he wants a degree. As compensation, I will marry him ahead of schedule." "Ayako-san," Naoki murmured, looking down. "Why are you always so good to me?" Ayako gazed at Naoki, her eyes holding a universe of unspoken words hidden in the shadows. Kaito answered for her in his heart. "Because she loves you, of course." In his previous life, Ayako Tachibana had been a force of nature, the youngest director in her father's corporate empire, a woman of stunning beauty and formidable achievements. Countless young men admired her from afar, but none dared to approach her. She was, after all, engaged to Kaito Tanaka, but only Kaito knew the truth. Despite their betrothal, arranged since childhood, Ayako had always treated him with a chilling indifference. He'd assumed it was just her nature, until the day he learned he'd failed his university entrance exams. He had been shattered, his sobs echoing through the house, and Ayako had unexpectedly proposed they move up the wedding. He'd been overwhelmed with gratitude, convinced that his heartbreak had finally unlocked her affection. After they married, he poured all his energy into being a good husband. He never gave up on his dream of an education, but every time he tried to study, pulling out his books late at night, Ayako would appear. She would pull him away from his desk and into their bed, her passion a relentless, desperate thing that left him too exhausted to think. They had 7 children. He worked himself to the bone to provide for them, to give his wife and children a better life. He died in a construction accident the day his last child was born. His spirit lingered, weightless and unseen. He watched Ayako stand before his gravestone, her voice devoid of emotion. "Kaito, I gave you the marriage and the children you wanted. Consider us even for the acceptance letter." Only then did he understand. She had always loved Naoki. She had planned to break their engagement to marry Naoki, but Naoki wanted to go to university. So she had stolen Kaito's acceptance, his ticket to a future, and given it to the man she truly loved. She had married Kaito as a form of payment. That was why she had been so cold, yet so possessive. That was why she had seduced him with such ferocity whenever he tried to study. She had to ensure he would never rise, never become a competitor to Naoki. In that life, Naoki had gone to university and become a renowned professor, a man celebrated and admired. Kaito Tanaka had been a simple laborer who worked until his body gave out. He would not make the same mistake again. Kaito wiped away the tears that had stained his cheeks without his notice and turned his back on the post office. This time, he would claim his own future. He would fulfill the dream that had been stolen from him. As for Ayako Tachibana, he no longer wanted her. He returned to an empty house and began to pack. He was halfway through when his parents stormed into the room. "What's the point of all this reading?" his father snarled, snatching a high school mathematics textbook from his hands. You studied until dawn every night and still failed. His mother sniffed with disdain. Look at Naoki. He barely reviewed for an hour and passed with flying colors. You're just not smart enough, Kaito. Naoki appeared in the doorway at the perfect moment. Father, mother, please don't say that. Big brother tried very hard. His mother's cold expression vanished as she turned to Naoki, her face beaming. Never mind him. Naoki, you got into university. I'm going to host a feast in the courtyard. I'll invite the whole neighborhood to celebrate. His father grinned in agreement. Yes, a proper celebration. That evening, a canopy was erected in the yard. Neighbors filled the tables, their chatter revolving entirely around Naoki. Naoki is so brilliant, getting in was no trouble for him at all. A different class from his brother, that's for sure. Just then, the courtyard gate creaked open, and Ayako Tachibana walked in. She wore a crisp, tailored suit that commanded attention, and in her hand, she carried an elegantly wrapped gift box. She walked directly to Naoki. Congratulations, she said, her voice soft as she offered him the gift. Naoki's face, a mixture of surprise and delight, flushed a deep red. Thank you, Ayako-san. Ayako gave a slight nod, then came and sat beside Kaito. Don't be too heartbroken about failing, she said placidly, as if offering routine condolences. Since things are this way, we'll move the wedding up 1 month from today. The last time Kaito had heard those words, he had been moved to tears. Now, they just sounded like a cruel joke. He didn't respond. Ayako didn't seem to care, as if she were merely informing him of a decision already made. Ayako-san. Big brother. Come for a picture. Naoki called out, waving with a triumphant smile. Ayako stood, gesturing for Kaito to join them. He followed silently, positioning himself at the very edge of the crowd. The photographer raised his camera. Crack, the wooden support beam of the canopy above them suddenly snapped, swinging down with violent force. Look out! The crowd erupted in chaos, but instinct drove everyone toward one person. They rushed to shield Naoki. The heavy beam slammed into Kaito's shoulder. A searing pain shot through his body, and he staggered, collapsing to the ground. Naoki, are you all right? His mother cried out, her voice filled with panic. Ayako was instantly by Naoki's side, her brow furrowed. Are you hurt? Naoki, still shaken, shook his head. I am fine. Just a scrape on my hand. Quick! To the clinic, his father yelled, pulling Naoki to his feet. Ayako followed without a moment's hesitation. They hurried away, not one of them sparing a glance for Kaito, who was still pinned to the ground. It was the neighbors who finally rushed over, struggling to lift the heavy frame off him. My God, Kaito. Your shoulder is bleeding. Mrs. Soto exclaimed. Why didn't you call out to them? You're seriously hurt. Kaito looked at the ugly, bleeding gash on his shoulder and slowly shook his head. What would have been the point? No one cared, and from now on, he would never again beg for their love. Back in his room, Kaito's shoulder felt as if it were on fire. He clenched his teeth, dabbing at the wound with a cotton ball soaked in alcohol. The pain made sweat bead on his forehead, but he remained utterly silent. He didn't drift into a restless sleep until the sky began to lighten. Kaito, how can you still be sleeping? The door was thrown open, and his mother's sharp voice pierced the morning quiet. Your brother is hurt. He was up all night in pain at the clinic, and you're here sleeping soundly. Get up and make him a proper breakfast to help him recover. Kaito gripped the edge of his blanket. His shoulder was still bleeding, but his mother hadn't even looked. Mother, there's no need to trouble him, Naoki said, stepping into the room with a cheerful smile. Ayako-san is taking me out for a fine meal. She said I need to build my strength back up. He turned to Kaito, a glint of smug satisfaction in his eyes. You should come too, big brother. You rarely go out. I'll show you the sights. Kaito wanted to refuse, but his mother was already snapping at him. Hurry up and get ready. Don't keep them waiting. At the restaurant, Ayako ordered with practiced ease. The simmered pork, no ginger. Steamed fish, light on the salt. And a sweet and sour pork. They were all of Naoki's favorites. Kaito suddenly remembered all the meals he'd shared with Ayako in his past life. She never remembered that he hated cilantro, or that he disliked fish. Yet she knew every detail of Naoki's palate. Her excuse then had been, Naoki is your little brother. As his future sister-in-law, It's my duty to know his tastes. Now he knew it wasn't duty. It was love. Throughout the meal, Ayako meticulously picked the bones from Naoki's fish, served him choice pieces from each dish, and kept his water glass full. Kaito, sitting directly across from them, might as well have been invisible. Ayako-san, I heard there's a new movie out that's supposed to be wonderful, Naoki said after they had finished, a note of regret in his voice. But it's completely sold out. Without batting an eye, Ayako replied, I'll make a call. Kaito's head shot up. In his past life, he had come down with a terrible flu. The hospital was out of medicine, and he had begged Ayako to use her connections to find some. What had she said then? Rules are rules, Kaito. I can't make exceptions. But now, to make Naoki happy, she would discard her principles without a second thought. In the cinema, light from the screen flickered across the darkened room. Kaito sat in a corner, his ears filled with the low murmur of conversation between Ayako and Naoki. Ayako-san, this part is a little scary, Naoki whispered, leaning closer to her. Don't be afraid. Ayoko's voice was a low, gentle hum, full of a patience Kaito had never heard. It's not real. Naoki kept pointing at the screen, asking questions, and Ayako answered every one, patiently explaining the plot. Kaito gripped the armrests, his nails digging into his palms. He felt like an intruder, a complete outsider. When the movie ended, the crowd surged toward the exit. Suddenly, an angry shout cut through the noise. Thief! Someone stole my wallet. The crowd dissolved into a panicked mass of shoving bodies. Kaito felt a hard push from behind. He stumbled forward, his knees hitting the hard floor. Before he could get up, a stampede of feet descended upon him. Pain exploded across his hands, his back, his legs. He curled into a ball, trying to protect his head, but through the chaos, he heard Naoki's voice, chillingly clear. The thief is here. It's him. Kaito snapped his head up and met Naoki's triumphant gaze. The next second, a burly man lunged at him, his hand clamping around Kaito's throat. You dare steal from me? You got a death wish. It wasn't me. Kaito choked, black spots dancing in his vision as he struggled to speak. You have the wrong person. Still denying it, the man snarled, slapping him hard across the face. Kaito's cheek stung with a fiery heat. In the dim light, the man couldn't see his face clearly. He just held on, his fists falling like rain. Ayako. Kaito cried out, a raw, desperate plea for help, but in the distance, Ayako was rushing to Naoki's side. Naoki, why did you run off? Didn't I tell you to stay with me? Ayako-san, Naoki said, limping towards her, his voice trembling. I think I twisted my ankle. Without another word, Ayako helped him up. Don't move. I'm taking you to the hospital. But Big Brother is still in there. Forget him, Ayako said, walking away without a backward glance. He can get out on his own. Kaito's cries were swallowed by the surrounding chaos. He could only watch, his heart twisting in agony, as Ayako's silhouette vanished into the crowd. The large man dragged him out of the cinema and proceeded to beat him senseless. Kaito curled up on the ground, his consciousness fading, until the man finally stopped and pulled his messy hair back. Hey, it's not him, the man exclaimed, suddenly panicked. Who was it that pointed you out? Sorry, my mistake. From the distance came another shout. The thief is over there. The man shoved some money into Kaito's hand and ran off. Kaito leaned against the wall, forcing himself to stand. His body was a canvas of bruises, and blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He limped toward the hospital. In the emergency room, a nurse tended to his wounds, her voice full of sympathy. Where is your family? You're so badly hurt. How could they leave you alone? Kaito said nothing, but his gaze drifted to the next room. Ayako was kneeling on the floor, carefully applying an ice pack to Naoki's ankle, her brow creased with worry, as if he had suffered a grave injury. I don't have any family, Kaito said, his voice eerily calm as he looked away. The nurse followed his gaze and sighed. That woman over there is so devoted to that young man. He just sprained his ankle, and she's treating it like a national emergency. Kaito managed a small, bitter smile. Yes, so devoted enough to make his heart turn to ice. After his wounds were treated, Kaito walked home alone. He spent the next few days locked in his room, quietly waiting for the new school term to begin. His self-imposed isolation was broken on the day of Naoki's birthday. The house was buzzing with activity from early morning. His parents were busy preparing a feast, and the living room was piled high with gifts, all for Naoki. Kaito stood on the landing of the stairs, watching the festive scene below, a heavy stone settling in his chest. Today was his birthday, too. He and Naoki were twins, but their fates were worlds apart. From the day they were born, his parents believed that he, the stronger twin, had stolen nourishment from his weaker brother in the womb. From that day on, all their love and attention were lavished on Naoki. Kaito was treated like a ghost in his own home. Kaito, what are you doing just standing there? Come down and help, his mother called up, her tone instantly turning cold the moment she saw him. He walked downstairs in silence and began setting the table. Dish after dish was brought out, every single one a favorite of Naoki's: seafood, mushrooms, leeks, all things Kaito was severely allergic to. Big brother, why aren't you eating? Naoki asked, his voice laced with concern, but his eyes held a glint of defiance. His mother shot Kaito a look of annoyance. It's a happy occasion, stop looking so miserable. Eat something. It was only then that Ayako seemed to notice him. She casually placed a single shrimp in his bowl. Here, eat. Kaito looked at the shrimp, and a slow smile spread across his face. He carefully picked it out and placed it on the side of his plate. I'm allergic to shellfish, he said softly. He then gestured to the entire spread on the table. And to all of this, as well. A sudden silence fell over the table. His mother's face darkened. Why didn't you say so earlier? Kaito didn't answer earlier. He had told them 100 times over the years. No one ever remembered. He put down his chopsticks, stood up, and went back to his room. Behind him, the sounds of laughter and celebration quickly resumed, as if he had never been there at all. In the middle of the night, a shriek from Naoki shattered the silence. My watch is gone. The entire neighborhood lit up in an instant. Kaito was startled awake. He opened his door to see everyone frantically searching for the watch, an expensive birthday gift from Ayako to Naoki. Find it yet? No. We've searched the whole courtyard. You don't think, someone said, their voice trailing off as they glanced meaningfully toward Kaito's room. His parents burst in without knocking and began to tear the room apart. Kaito stood aside, watching numbly as they crudely ripped the blankets off his bed and shook out his clothes. Found it, his mother cried, pulling a glittering watch from under his pillow, her face a mask of fury. Slap, the blow landed hard across Kaito's face. You shameless thief, his mother screamed. Stealing from your own brother. How could I have a son like you? Naoki stood in the doorway, his eyes red. Big brother, if you liked the watch, you could have just told me. You didn't have to steal it. I didn't steal it. Kaito's voice trembled. The evidence is right here, and you still deny it, a neighbor scoffed. Stealing at such a young age. He needs to be taught a lesson. His father's face was grim. We will teach him a lesson. We're sending him to a disciplinary work detail. Good. A fine example of parental duty, the crowd murmured in approval. Kaito stood in the center of them all, looking at their angry, distorted faces, a profound cold seeping into his bones. Ayako, I swear I didn't steal it, he pleaded, grabbing her wrist, his voice shaking. Please, just this once, believe me. Ayako looked at him, her eyes full of disappointment. Kaito, the evidence is right here. How can you expect me to believe you? She gently, methodically, pried his fingers from her wrist. The force was light, but each finger she loosened felt like another piece of his hope being broken. Besides, she added, as my future husband, you should be setting an example. Kaito's hand fell limply to his side. Her future husband, what a joke. She wouldn't even grant him the basic courtesy of trust, yet she used that title to crush him. He stopped resisting, allowing his parents and the neighbors to drag him away to the work camp. As they took him away, he heard Naoki's voice. Ayako-san, do you think Big Brother will hate me for this? And Ayoko's reply, a caress of sound that cut him to the quick, don't overthink it. This was his own fault. The 3 days at the disciplinary work camp were hell. Kaito was forced to perform 12 hours of hard labor a day, fueled by nothing but stale, moldy bread. At night, he curled up on the damp concrete floor, the pain from his injuries making sleep impossible. On the morning of the 4th day, the iron gate finally opened. He dragged his heavy feet out of the camp, each step a fresh agony. Kaito? A familiar voice made him look up. It was his old high school teacher, Mr. Suzuki, staring at him in shock. What are you doing here? Kaito opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat felt clogged with shame, too thick to even form a plausible limr. Suzuki looked from the camp's gate to Kaito's pale, haggard face and seemed to understand that he didn't press for details, just sighed. The university term is about to start. Have you bought your train ticket yet? University. Kaito felt a jolt of disorientation after 3 days of sunless misery. He had almost forgotten he had a future to fight for. He shook his head. It just so happens I have an extra ticket here, Mr. Suzuki said, pulling an envelope from his bag. I'll have it mailed to your house. Kaito's eyes burned. He bowed deeply. Thank you, sensei. As he dragged his exhausted body home, he saw the mailman standing at the entrance to his neighborhood. Ayako was there, signing for a delivery. He got closer just as she tore open the envelope. It was the train ticket from Mr. Suzuki. She saw him approach and held up the ticket, her voice laced with ice. Why did you buy this? Kaito snatched the ticket from her, his hand trembling slightly. It's not mine. A friend is traveling and asked me to hold it for him. Ayoko's expression cooled, and she didn't press the matter. She was so confident in her control over him that the thought of him actually leaving never crossed her mind. As he walked toward the house, she turned to chase after the mailman. Naoki had mentioned wanting to try a new pastry shop in the city, and she needed to arrange for someone to pick some up for him. The moment Kaito pushed open the door to his room, his blood ran cold. The room looked as though a tornado had ripped through it. Drawers were pulled out, clothes were strewn everywhere, and his mattress had been flipped over. What terrified him most was that the small blue cloth pouch he kept hidden in a slit in his pillow was gone. Big brother. Looking for this? Naoki leaned against the doorframe, dangling the familiar blue pouch from his fingers. Kaito recognized it instantly. His grandmother had secretly given it to him before she died. It contained her life savings, 327,600 yen. Give it back. Kaito lunged, trying to grab it. Naoki dodged him easily, a mocking smile on his lips. What were you planning to do with all this money? It's none of your business. Don't tell me you were thinking of retaking the entrance exams. Naoki's eyes narrowed. Kaito's expression faltered. I knew it. Naoki sneered. Did you really think I would let you have a chance to get back on your feet? What do you want? Kaito's voice was a raw, ragged whisper. Naoki tilted his head, a deceptively innocent smile on his face. It's simple. Kneel. Kowtow to me 3 times, and I'll give you the money back. Kaito's fingernails dug so deep into his palms they drew blood. What? You don't want to? Naoki made a show of starting to tear the pouch. Then I guess this money, I'll do it. Kaito's knees hit the floor with a heavy thud. The first kowtow, his forehead struck the wooden planks with a dull sound. The second, a tear splashed onto the floor. The third, his entire body was shaking. Can I have it back now? Naoki just smiled. Then, as Kaito watched in horror, he turned, walked to the fireplace, and tossed the pouch and all the money inside into the roaring flames. No. Kaito threw himself at Naoki, trying to snatch the pouch back from the fire, but just as his fingertips were about to touch it, Naoki let out a piercing scream and threw himself backward, his arm accidentally brushing against the hot iron of the fireplace grate. Naoki's scream was deafening. Kaito froze, watching as an ugly red burn instantly blistered across Naoki's fair skin. What happened? Ayako and his parents burst into the room. When they saw Naoki on the floor, groaning in agony with his burned arm, their faces turned ashen with fury. Kaito. What did you do to your brother? His mother shrieked, rushing to Naoki's side, her voice a torrent of anger and anguish. Kaito opened his mouth to explain, but his father's hand cracked across his face. You worthless creature. If anything happens to Naoki, I'll kill you. Ayako was already helping Naoki to his feet, heading for the door. To the hospital. Kaito was roughly dragged along with them. At the hospital, the doctor's expression was grim. The patient has 3rd-degree burns on his arm. He needs an immediate skin graft. Use his father commanded, pointing a finger at Kaito. He's the older brother. It's a perfect match. I don't agree. Kaito struggled violently. I didn't burn him. He did it. Himps, you still dare to argue? His mother slapped him again. If you hadn't been trying to take his money, would Naoki have gotten hurt? Why do you need money anyway? Are you still thinking about retaking those exams? Let me tell you, someone like you could try 100 times and still fail. You're better off just staying home. 2 nurses held him down. As the anesthetic needle plunged into his arm, He heard Ayoko's cold voice. You still want to retake the exams? You failed once, you'll most likely fail again. Besides, didn't I tell you we would be getting married soon? Isn't that what you've always dreamed of? Kaito looked up at the woman who had once been the center of his universe. Not anymore. Never again. A large patch of skin was harvested from Kaito's thigh. He was given no painkillers, no anti-inflammatory medicine. His parents specifically instructed the doctor, don't give him anything for the pain. Let this be a lesson he won't forget. Late that night, Kaito lay curled on the hospital bed, his body racked with pain, his thin uniform soaked with sweat. Sleep was impossible. He got up, hoping a short walk might distract him. Through a half-open door down the hall, he saw Ayako carefully helping Naoki sip water. His mother was peeling an apple. The three of them looked like a perfect, harmonious family. That young man is so lucky, a nurse whispered to another in the hallway. Just a minor burn, and his parents are so worried, his fiancée so attentive. I heard his older brother did it on purpose, out of jealousy. My God, how could any brother be so cruel? Kaito heard their whispers and smiled. He smiled until his body shook, smiled until tears streamed down his face. How absurd that he was the one who had been burned, the one whose flesh had been cut away, the one left in agony. But in the end, everyone believed he was the villain. The day he was discharged, Kaito's wound still throbbed with a dull ache. He trailed silently behind his family, watching as his parents and Ayako formed a protective circle around Naoki. As they were leaving, a soldier approached Ayako and handed her an invitation. Director Tachibana, there's a company social tonight. Will you be attending? Ayako frowned, instinctively about to refuse. Ayako-san, take me with you. Naoki suddenly grabbed her sleeve, his eyes sparkling. I've never been to a military social before. His mother chimed in with a smile. Yes, Ayako, you should take him. Naoki is at an age to be thinking about marriage. You could help him look. Ayoko's lips parted. She gave Naoki a complicated look, but finally nodded. All right. Naoki cheered, then slung an arm over Kaito's shoulder. Big brother should come too. You know me best, you can help me choose. Kaito tried to refuse, but his father's impatient frown cut him off. Just go. Stop making a fuss. The social was held in a grand, brightly lit hall, buzzing with conversation. Kaito sat in a corner, watching Naoki weave through the crowd while Ayako followed close behind, a displeased look on her face. Excuse me, would you care to dance? A young female doctor asked Naoki, extending a hand. He doesn't like to dance, Ayako said coldly, stepping between them. Hello there, mind if I get to know you? Another woman, an elegant intellectual type, approached. She's too short for you, Ayako said. Her critique merciless. One by one, women flocked to Naoki, and one by one, Ayako turned them all away with a litany of excuses. Naoki finally laughed, tilting his head at her. Ayako-san, if you're this picky, how will I ever find anyone? He winked. At this rate, the only person I'll be able to marry is you. Ayoko's pupils constricted. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Just then, a slender female officer walked up. Are you spoken for? If not, how about me? Ayako suddenly pulled Naoki behind her. I'm sorry, she announced, he already has a fiancée. The officer's face fell. He has a fiancée and is still coming to a singles social? How shameless. What did you just say? Ayoko's voice cracked like a whip, and she swung her hand. Slap, the woman staggered back, blood trickling from her lip. The room erupted as people rushed to intervene, but Ayako seemed to have lost her mind, striking the woman again and again from his corner. Kaito watched in stunned silence. Ayako was always so composed, so ruthlessly controlled, even under pressure. But now, because someone had called Naoki shameless, she had completely unraveled. He felt a sudden, bitter urge to laugh. After all these years, he had never realized just how deep her love for Naoki ran. That's enough. Naoki finally grabbed Ayoko's hand. Ayako-san, let's go. Only then did she stop, her face dark with rage. She pulled Naoki away, and they stormed out of the hall. Kaito followed behind them, his heart a block of ice. In the car, Ayoko's anger hadn't subsided. She floored the accelerator, the car picking up speed. Ayako-san, slow down, Naoki pleaded, His face pale as he gripped his seatbelt, Ayako snapped back to reality and slammed her foot on the brake. The brakes failed. The car careened out of control, smashing violently into the roadside guardrail. Crunch, the force of the impact sent a wave of blackness over Kaito's vision. He awoke to the piercing wail of an ambulance. The three of them were rushed to the hospital. Kaito's injuries were minor. After being bandaged up, he sat on a bench in the hallway, feeling no pain from the gash on his forehead that was still bleeding. Slap, his mother's hand struck his face. She grabbed the collar of his shirt, her features twisted in rage. "How are you watching Naoki? If anything happens to him, I will never forgive you." Kaito sat there numbly, too weary to even defend himself. The door to the emergency room flew open, and a doctor hurried out. "The patient has a ruptured kidney. He needs a transplant immediately." "Use his father yelled, yanking Kaito forward. "He's the older brother. It's his duty." A nurse checked his blood type and shook her head. "They're not a match. I'll do it." A quiet voice came from behind them. Ayako, her face deathly pale, emerged from another room, the gauze on her forehead already soaked with blood. "Director Tachibana, your body is in no condition to donate," the nurse exclaimed. Ayako's eyes were resolute. "Don't worry about me. Just save him." Kaito watched as she was wheeled into the operating room, and he started to laugh. She really did love him enough to die for him. He staggered to his feet and turned, walking away from it all. In the days that followed, while everyone was preoccupied at the hospital, Kaito took his chance. He washed dishes at a restaurant by day and worked at a textile factory by night. The harsh detergent made his hands raw and chapped, but he didn't care. The neighbors were all talking about how successful Naoki's surgery was, how noble Ayako's sacrifice had been. Kaito ignored it all, silently counting the money he was earning. Finally, he had saved enough for university tuition and living expenses. The day Naoki was discharged, the house was decorated as if welcoming a hero. "Ayako-san, you should come live with us," Naoki said, draping an arm affectionately around her shoulders, his eyes shining. "You saved my life, so it's my turn to take care of you." He looked down, a bashful smile on his face. "Besides, we'll be family soon enough. No one will gossip if we live together." Ayako's gaze lingered on Naoki's face for a few seconds. Her lips parted. "All right." Kaito watched the scene from the kitchen doorway, but he felt nothing in his chest anymore. After lunch, Naoki announced he was going to buy fresh gauze for Ayako's wound dressing. "I'll be right back." Half an hour later, the front door was thrown open. "Help me." Naoki stumbled in, his hair a mess, his collar torn, and his pale face bruised and swollen. "Naoki." Ayako shot up from her seat and rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "What happened?" Naoki's eyes filled with tears. He pointed a trembling finger at Kaito. "Big brother hired people to hurt me. They said they were going to kill me. If I hadn't run, I wouldn't have made it back." "My God," his father roared, slamming his hand on the table so hard the teacups jumped. His mother flew at Kaito, her hand striking his face. "You ungrateful monster. How could I have a son like you?" Kaito's head snapped to the side, and blood trickled from his lip. He slowly turned his head back, his gaze calm as he looked at each person in the room, his father's face, twisted with rage. His mother's hysterical shrieking. Ayako's eyes, burning with a cold fire. And Naoki, peeking out from behind Ayako, shooting him a triumphant smile. "I didn't do it," Kaito said. His voice was quiet, but perfectly clear. Still denying it, his father bellowed. "The proof is right in front of you." Ayako handed Naoki over to his mother, then walked to stand before Kaito. Her shadow fell over him, a suffocating presence. "Mr. Tanaka," she said to his father, "how do you wish to handle this?" "We're done with this disgrace to our family," his father said, patting a still trembling Naoki. "He's your fiancé, Ayako. Do with him as you see fit." Ayako's eyes turned to chips of ice. "Very well. I'll take him." She gave a sharp nod to two soldiers who had accompanied her. "Take him away. He will be dealt with according to military regulations." Her cold words exploded in Kaito's ears, a final, sharp blade severing the last thread of his hope. The two soldiers seized him, one on each side. His knees scraped along the ground as they dragged him out, but he refused to make a sound. On the training grounds, the sun beat down like a furnace. Rough rope bit into Kaito's wrists, cutting off his circulation. He was tied to a punishment rack, his bare back exposed to the scorching heat. Begin. At Ayako's command, a whip sliced through the air. With the first lash, Kaito bit through his lip. With the fifth, his nails dug into his palms, drawing blood. With the 10th, his vision started to blur, a dull roar filling his ears. With the 15th, he heard the distinct, sharp crack of one of his own bones breaking. By the time the 20th lash fell, Kaito couldn't feel the pain anymore. The sun baked his open wounds. His consciousness began to fray. He saw Ayako's cold eyes, Naoki's triumphant smile, his parents' disgusted faces. He collapsed to the ground just as the darkness consumed him. When he woke, he was in his own bed. His back was a sea of fire, every inch of skin screaming in protest. He struggled to sit up and saw a stack of money and a letter on his bedside table. With trembling fingers, he opened the letter. Ayako's familiar, crisp handwriting filled the page. Today, Naoki registers for university. Your parents and I are taking him. Stay home and rest. When I return, we will be married. Kaito stared at the few short lines of text and began to laugh, a broken sound that shook his whole body until tears streamed down his face. How ridiculous. She beat him half to death and still expected him to obediently wait for her to come back and marry him. He picked up a pen and, on the back of her letter, wrote his reply. There's no need. I will not marry you. Ayako, this is goodbye. He slammed the letter down on the table, then forced himself to his feet. From under the bed, he pulled out his already packed bag. Inside was the money he had secretly saved, and his real university acceptance notice. Outside, the sun was rising. Kaito took one last look at the house he had lived in for 20 years, then turned and walked toward the train station without looking back. As Ayako's car sped toward Naoki's university, the train carrying Kaito slowly pulled away, heading toward his new life. The train rattled along the tracks, leaving the station and his old life behind. Kaito leaned against the hard seat, the wounds on his back aching with a dull, persistent throb. He clenched his jaw, refusing to make a sound. He clutched the bag in his lap. It held his university acceptance notice and every yen he owned, the entirety of his hope for a new beginning. The carriage was noisy and crowded, thick with the smell of different foods. Kaito kept his head down, trying to be invisible, but his pale face and the raw scrapes on his arms drew a few glances. Young man, are you all right? A middle-aged woman sitting across from him asked kindly, offering him a warm rice ball. You don't look so well. Here, eat something. Kaito started, looking up into a face full of genuine warmth, not a trace of malice in her eyes. He hesitated, then accepted the food with a quiet, thank you. Where are you headed? The woman asked. To university, he replied, his voice a little hoarse. Oh, a university student. How wonderful, she beamed, patting his shoulder. He flinched in pain, and she quickly drew her hand back. Oh, I'm so sorry, did I hurt you? Kaito shook his head, managing a weak smile. It's nothing. At that moment, a young woman sitting diagonally from him looked up from her book. Her gaze fell on Kaito. She wore a pair of delicate, gold-rimmed glasses, and had a gentle, refined air about her. She set her book down. Do you need any help? You seem to be in some discomfort. Kaito instinctively tightened his grip on his bag, his eyes wary. The woman seemed to notice his defensiveness and offered a small, reassuring smile. My name is Yuzuki Abe. I'm a lecturer at a university. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. She added, I heard you say you're on your way to university. I only think that if one of my own students were in trouble on a journey, I would hope a stranger might offer them a hand. Hearing the name of the university, Kaito's eyes lit up. It was the very school he was headed for. He hesitated for a moment before replying in a low voice, Thank you, Abe-sensei. I'm all right. Yuzuki nodded and didn't press further. Instead, she took a small tin of ointment from her bag and offered it to him. This is an antiseptic salve. It will help with your wounds. I noticed some blood has soaked through your shirt. If you don't mind, you could try it. Kaito stared at the tin, a wave of complex emotions washing over him. He had never imagined that a complete stranger would show him such kindness. He took the ointment. Thank you, Abe-sensei, he said softly. After a moment, he added, I'm a student at a university. A flicker of surprise crossed Yuzuki's face, followed by a warm smile. What a coincidence. In that case, you truly mustn't be a stranger with me. As the train continued on, Sunlight streamed through the window, warming Kaito's face. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he felt a flicker of warmth that came not from family, but from the simple kindness of strangers. As night fell, the carriage lights dimmed. Kaito was exhausted, but he fought to stay awake, terrified that someone might steal his bag if he fell asleep. But weariness was a battle he couldn't win. His head began to nod in a hazy state between sleep and waking. He felt someone gently draping a coat over his shoulders. He jolted awake, his heart pounding, only to see Yuzuki beside him. She had placed her own coat over him. Seeing him awake, she apologized. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. It gets cold in the carriage at night. I didn't want you to catch a chill." Kaito stared at her, a sudden stinging in his eyes. He quickly looked down, murmuring, "Thank you." Yuzuki smiled faintly, returned to her seat, and continued reading her book. The next morning, the train finally arrived at its destination. Kaito gathered his belongings, ready to disembark. Before he left, the kind middle-aged woman handed him a small bag of dried bread. "Take care of yourself, young man. Good luck." He nodded gratefully. "Thank you. Don't mention it. A university man like you has a bright future ahead." After saying his goodbyes, he saw Yuzuki stand up as well. "Shall we go together? Since we're both heading to the university, my friend can give you a ride." Kaito was hesitant, but her gentle expression was disarming. He found himself nodding. "If it's not too much trouble." Stepping out of the train station, Kaito took a deep breath of the city air. The sun on his face seemed to wash away the exhaustion of his journey. He looked out at the sprawling urban landscape, a new and powerful resolve hardening within him. This time, he whispered to himself, "I fight for me." And with that, he strode toward the start of his new life. With Yuzuki's help, Kaito arrived at the university without any trouble. The campus was a vibrant green, bustling with students full of life and energy. He stood before the main gate, his eyes misting over as he read the golden characters spelling out the university's name. "Excuse me, are you a new student?" a friendly upperclassman asked. Walking over, Kaito nodded. "Yes, I'm here to register." The upperclassman smiled and took his bag. "Come on, I'll show you where to go." Yuzuki, being a faculty member, had her own duties to attend to. Seeing that Kaito was in good hands, she handed him a slip of paper with her contact information. "If you run into any difficulties, you can come find me." Kaito took the paper and tucked it away carefully. "Thank you, Abe-sensei." She gave him a final, reassuring smile and went on her way. With the upperclassman's guidance, Kaito quickly completed his registration and got the key to his dormitory room. His room was on the second floor, clean and simple. With sunlight streaming through the window onto the bed, he sat on the edge of the mattress, running his hand over the new, crisp bedding. For the first time, he felt a profound sense of hope. For the first time, he realized life could be good. That evening, as he was finishing unpacking, there was a soft knock on his door. He opened it to find Yuzuki standing there. She was holding a bag and smiling. "I heard you were all settled in, so I thought I'd check on you. I brought you a few things that might be useful." Kaito took the bag. Inside were a towel, a toothbrush, a notebook, and other daily necessities. A warmth spread through his chest, and his voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. "Sensei, you've done too much." Yuzuki shook her head. "It's nothing at all. From now on, if you need anything, you can always come to me." Kaito nodded, a genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. As night fell, Kaito stood at his window, looking up at the countless stars. He knew that from this day forward, his life was his own. The pain and betrayal of the past would become just that, the past. Now, finally, he could fight for himself and chase his own light. Ayako had forgotten something. On her way back to the car, she passed Kaito's room and, on impulse, pushed the door open. The room was silent and empty. On the desk lay the letter she had left, but on the back was a new line of script, written in a hand that was firm, almost defiant. "There's no need. I will not marry you. Ayako, this is goodbye." She stared at the words, her brow knitting together slightly. Then, with a cold scoff, she crumpled the paper into a ball and tossed it into the wastebasket. Throwing a tantrum, she muttered to herself, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. "He'll come crawling back in a few days." In her mind, Kaito was a docile creature, completely dependent on her. How could he possibly leave? Without her protection, Where could he even go? He was injured, and he had no money. She turned and went downstairs, just as Kaito's parents were storming in. Where is that worthless son of ours? His father demanded, his face dark. Someone said they saw him leaving with a small suitcase. Did he steal something from the house and run away? His mother screeched, that ungrateful wolf. After we raised him all these years, he dares to run away. I hope he dies out there. Ayako listened to their increasingly vicious curses, a slight frown touching her lips. Naoki came running down the stairs, his eyes red-rimmed. Father, mother, don't be angry. Big brother was probably just upset. Upset, his mother cried, pulling Naoki into a fierce hug. Oh, Naoki, you're too kind. A heartless creature like him doesn't deserve to be your brother. Ayako stood to the side, her gaze sweeping over their furious faces. Then to Naoki's tear-streaked one, it occurred to her that not a single one of them had asked about the state of Kaito's wounds. The thought was so fleeting and unusual that it startled her, but she quickly suppressed it, her voice turning cold again. Don't worry about him. He'll be back soon enough. His father grunted. If he comes back, I'll break his legs. Exactly, his mother added. Make him kneel and beg for forgiveness. Kaito couldn't really be gone. He loved her too much. He would never be able to leave her. As their curses continued to fill the air, Ayako found herself wrestling with a strange, unsettling feeling she couldn't name. After ensuring she hadn't forgotten anything else, Ayako personally drove Naoki to his university. His parents came along, their faces puffed with pride. Naoki, you must take good care of yourself at university. If you need anything, just tell us, his mother fussed, clinging to his hand. His father clapped Ayako on the shoulder. Ayako, we're counting on you to look after Naoki. Ayako nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She had just sent someone to check the records at every train station in the region. There was no trace of Kaito. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Ayako-san? Naoki tugged gently at her sleeve. What are you thinking about? She came back to herself with a start. Nothing, she said coolly. Naoki blinked, then lowered his voice. Are you thinking about Big Brother? Ayoko's eyes hardened. Why would I think about him? Naoki's brow furrowed in a display of hurt. I was just worried you were sad. After all, he loves you so much. Ayako didn't answer, just raised her hand to pat his head. The gesture felt stiffer than usual. After settling Naoki in, Ayako rented 2 apartments nearby, one for his parents, and one for herself. His mother couldn't stop smiling. Oh, Ayako, you're so thoughtful. Naoki is so lucky to have a sister-in-law like you. Ayako forced a smile and said nothing. That night, she stood alone on her balcony, smoking. Through the haze, Kaito's distant, indifferent eyes floated into her mind. Could he really be gone for good? The thought was a sharp sting, one she quickly and violently extinguished. That he was an insignificant person. Besides, he loved her more than life itself. How could he possibly leave her? She stubbed out her cigarette and went back inside, but as she lay in bed, for the first time in a long time, sleep would not come. The next morning, Naoki ran over to find her, full of excitement. Ayako-san, there's a welcome party at the university tonight. Will you come with me? Ayako was about to refuse, but looking at his eager face, she found herself nodding. At the party, Naoki was the center of attention, drawing the eyes of countless girls. Ayako stood in a corner, her gaze sweeping coolly over anyone who tried to approach him. But her mind drifted, inexplicably, to the past. Kaito had once looked at her with that same hopeful expression, asking if she would go with him to the town festival just once. She had always said no. Fine, she thought with a strange resolve. The next time he begs me like that, I suppose I can go with him. The first rays of dawn slanted through the library window, illuminating Kaito. He sat by the window, engrossed in a book, his pen flying across the pages of his notebook, leaving behind a trail of neat, precise characters. Kaito-kun, you're here early again. A gentle voice spoke beside him. Kaito looked up to see Yuzuki Abe smiling down at him, a cup of steaming soy milk in her hand. Abe-sensei. He started to stand, but she gently pressed him back into his seat. No need for formalities. This is for you. She handed him the cup. I've noticed you're always the first one here. Don't forget to rest. Kaito took the cup, the warmth seeping into his fingertips. He took a sip. It was perfectly sweetened, just the way he liked it. Thank you, sensei, he said softly, a small, unconscious smile touching his lips. Yuzuki sat down across from him and opened her own teaching materials. If you have any questions, you can always ask. This had become their routine. Ever since he'd started at the university, Yuzuki always seemed to appear while he was studying, sometimes with a warm drink, sometimes just to sit with him in companionable silence. At first, Kaito had felt a little awkward, but he slowly came to cherish this quiet warmth. Kaito. A cheerful voice broke the library's silence. A boy with black-rimmed glasses rushed over, slinging an arm around his shoulder. I knew I'd find you here. Come on, Professor Watanabe wants to see you in the lab. This was his roommate, a bright, outgoing boy who had declared Kaito his best friend on the first day of school. Professor Watanabe wants to see me? Kaito asked, surprised. He does, his roommate said, puffing out his chest as if he were the one being praised. Your last lab report was so good, he's passing it around as an example. He said he wants to make you his teaching assistant. Kaito's eyes lit up. It was the first time he had ever felt the pure joy of being recognized for his own merits. Yuzuki smiled and stood up. You should go. Don't keep the professor waiting. Walking along the tree-lined path of the campus, his roommate chattered non-stop. Do you know what they're saying in the department? They're calling you a genius. You started at the same time as everyone else, but you can already understand research papers that leave the rest of us scratching our heads. Kaito listened to his friend's earnest praise, and a warmth he'd never known filled his chest. This was what it felt like to be valued, to be admired, to be treated with genuine friendship. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Ayako knew nothing of Kaito's new life, yet a vague sense of unease gnawed at her. Ayako-san. Naoki's voice cut through her thoughts. He rushed into her office, throwing his arms around her shoulders. I saw a new watch I want. It's the latest model, everyone has one. Come with me to buy it. Ayako looked at Naoki's youthful face, trying to summon the old feelings of indulgence, but found her heart strangely calm. I have some work to do, she said, trying to put him off. Don't be like that, Naoki pouted, his eyes welling up. You haven't spent any time with me lately. Are you still thinking about Big Brother? Ayoko's expression instantly turned to ice. Don't be ridiculous. Why would I think of him? A shadow passed through Naoki's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a bright smile. Then it's a date. We'll go shopping this weekend. Are you having any trouble at school? Maybe I should visit the campus tomorrow, Ayako said, not answering him. In a move that surprised even herself, she gently disentangled herself from his embrace and changed the subject. No. You can't. At Ayako's confused look, Naoki's eyes darted around for a moment. Because I need to focus on my exams. You'll be a distraction. Ayako didn't question it further, just nodded. But her thoughts drifted away again, to the man who had vanished without a trace. Where in the world was he now? The grand prize for this year's literary competition goes to Kaito Tanaka for his short story, Chrysalis. With its profound emotional depth and unique perspective, the judges were unanimous. This work will be recommended for publication in the National Youth Literary Journal. In the university auditorium, thunderous applause filled the air. Kaito stood on the stage, bathed in the glow of a spotlight. He was dressed in a simple white shirt and jeans, but he stood out, radiating a quiet confidence. Yuzuki sat in the front row, her gaze fixed on him, an unconscious smile on her face. The wounded, wary young man she had met 3 months ago was gone, replaced by this self-assured and graceful author. Kaito gave a slight bow, his voice clear and steady. Thank you all for this honor. This piece is about a boy who finds a new life, but it is also my way of thanking all the people who have helped me. His gaze traveled across the crowd and met Yuzuki's. In that instant, they shared a silent understanding. A week later, the new issue of the National Youth Literary Journal was released with Kaito's Chrysalis as the lead story. The issue sold out almost immediately, and the editorial office was flooded with letters from readers wanting to connect with the promising new writer. Kaito, you're incredible, his roommate exclaimed, waving the journal around their dorm room. My parents even called to ask if the famous Kaito Tanaka was my roommate. Yuzuki-sensei said she's taking you out for a celebratory dinner tonight. She even made a reservation at that fancy hotel downtown, the one that's always booked. You know what that means. Kaito's ears turned red. Don't be ridiculous. Alright, I'm being ridiculous, his roommate said with a sly grin. We all know what's going on. But you and Sensei will have to wait until after you graduate. You know how those old traditionalists love to gossip. Meanwhile, in a high-end department store downtown, Ayako followed listlessly behind Naoki, her arms laden with shopping bags. Ayako-san, what do you think of this new leather jacket? Naoki preened in front of a mirror, completely oblivious to her distraction. Ayako murmured a non-committal response. Her attention had been captured by a newspaper at a nearby kiosk. The headline blared, Chrysalis, with the author's name printed beneath it, Kaito Tanaka. She walked over to the stand as if in a trance and bought a copy. Ayako-san, why are you buying a newspaper? Naoki complained, coming over. His face changed dramatically when he saw the name. What's so interesting about this boring stuff? Let's go to the next store. But Ayako didn't move. She stared at the paper, reading the article word by word. The man in the story, the one reborn from ashes, merged in her mind with the memory of Kaito's stubborn, defiant eyes. This article, it's very well written, Ayako said, her lips barely moving. How could I have never? Naoki's nails dug into his palms. He suddenly clutched his stomach and doubled over. Oh, my stomach. Ayako-san, it hurts so much. Ayako was jolted back to the present and hurried to support him. What's wrong? I think I ate something bad, Naoki moaned, leaning weakly against her shoulder. Can you take me to the clinic? The doctor at the clinic said nothing was wrong, but Naoki insisted on being admitted for observation. Ayako sat by his bedside, the newspaper still clutched in her hand. Ayako-san, Naoki whined, taking her hand. Stay with me, please. I feel awful. Ayako nodded, but her eyes drifted back to the newspaper. Stop looking at that. Naoki suddenly snatched the paper and tore it to shreds. I don't want to see his name, he sobbed. Have you forgotten that he almost got me killed? Besides, he never even got into university. How could he write something like this? It's not him. It can't be. The torn pieces of paper fluttered to the floor. Ayako stared at them, an unnameable frustration churning inside her. A proof copy of the National Youth Literary Journal, announcing his new regular column, lay on Kaito's desk. The classroom was empty, and the last rays of the evening sun slanted through the windows, bathing him in a warm, golden light. Working on your next piece? Yuzuki's voice came from the doorway. She walked in carrying a stack of papers, her eyes soft with concern. Kaito looked up, an involuntary smile spreading across his face. Sensei, look. My column starts next week. Yuzuki took the journal and looked through it, the sunlight catching on her eyelashes, casting a small shadow beneath her eyes. It's truly wonderful, she said, closing the magazine. But it's time to rest now. I'll walk you back to your dorm. They walked side by side along the tree-lined campus path. The shadows of the leaves danced on the ground. Suddenly, Yuzuki stopped. By the way, there's a young writers' forum in the city next month. I'd like to recommend you for it. Kaito Tanaka. A sharp, cold voice shattered the evening peace. Kaito froze. He turned slowly. Ayako stood a short distance away, her face a mask of cold fury. Her eyes were locked on Yuzuki's hand, which was resting gently on Kaito's shoulder. So it really is you, Ayako said, striding toward them, the heels of her boots clicking ominously on the pavement. I've been looking for you for 3 months. If I hadn't seen your name in that paper, how much longer were you planning to hide from me? Kaito took a deep breath, instinctively moving closer to Yuzuki. The small movement made Ayako's expression darken further. Director Tachibana, he said calmly, his voice betraying no emotion. Is there something you need? The formal title made her eyebrow arch. He had always called her Ayako-san. Now he was using a title, like a stranger. You're coming back with me, she said, reaching for his wrist. You've had your little tantrum. You never passed your exams, so what are you doing playing student at a university? Yuzuki stepped smoothly in front of Kaito. I must ask you to watch your tone. Only then did Ayako seem to truly see the other woman. She was a scholar, with her gold-rimmed glasses and gentle demeanor, yet she met Ayako's gaze without flinching. And who are you? Ayako's voice was like ice. Yuzuki Abe, she replied, adjusting her glasses. associate professor of literature at this university. And also, Kaito's teacher. Kaito? How familiar, Ayako sneered. What kind of teacher are you? Kaito never got into university. You must have tricked him, lured him here with a fake acceptance. She turned back to Kaito, her voice suddenly soft. Kaito, stop this foolishness. I know you're still angry. Come home with me, and we can talk properly. Kaito looked at the woman he had once adored and felt nothing but a cold, weary sense of the absurd. How could she still act as if she had any claim on him? Director Tachibana, I believe we have nothing left to say to each other, he said, looking her directly in the eye. I will not be going back. And I will not be marrying you. He paused. Furthermore, you seem to be mistaken about something. I earned my place at this university on my own merit. After all, you and I both know who truly had the scores to get in, don't we? Ayako's face froze. She couldn't believe he would speak to her with such cold, cutting formality. She couldn't believe the way he looked at her like she was a complete stranger. You've fallen for someone else, she demanded, pointing a trembling finger at Yuzuki. Is it because of her? You're willing to tell such lies now? You failed the exams. Kaito shook his head. No. It's because of me. I don't need to cling to anyone to survive. I have my own dreams, my own future to pursue. Who is the one living in denial here, Director? Do you need me to bring you my student records from the registrar's office? Ayako's chest heaved, but she stubbornly refused to believe it. She grabbed his shoulders. You're lying. You love me. Come back with me. I told you I would marry you. If you keep this up, you'll end up with nothing. That was the old me, Kaito said, gently shrugging off her hands. The me standing here now no longer loves you. The words were a knife, twisting deep into Ayako's heart. She staggered back a step, her face ashen. Impossible, she whispered. You can't not love me. Yuzuki stepped forward. Please respect Kaito's decision. Ayako's eyes flashed with venom. And what are you? Who are you to interfere in our affairs? That's enough. Kaito's voice rose. Professor Abe is my benefactor. I will ask you to show her some respect. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have to go. He took Yuzuki's arm and turned to leave. Kaito Tanaka. Ayako screamed at his back. You will regret this. He didn't look back. His shoulders were straight, his steps firm and unwavering. Kaito, it's terrible. His roommate burst into the library, panting. There are people at the main gate, a man and a woman who claim to be your parent. They're yelling for everyone to hear, saying you ran away with another woman, that you're unfilial, that you faked your way into the university, and they demand an investigation. The pen slipped from Kaito's fingers, his face instantly hardening. By the time he reached the gate, a crowd of students and faculty had already gathered. His parents were there, holding a banner and shouting at the top of their lungs. Our son ran off with another woman. We loved him, we worked so hard to raise him, and this is how he repays us. And this university protects a teacher like that. Is there no justice? His mother wailed, her voice shrill. His father was pointing a finger at the dean. If you don't hand over my son today, I'm calling the police, and I'll have you know, we have friends in high places. We have the backing of Director Tachibana. Kaito stood at the edge of the crowd, a chill spreading through him. He saw Naoki lurking behind his parents, a smug smile playing on his lips. Excuse me. I'm here. Could you please let me through? His voice was clear and steady. The crowd parted, and Kaito walked through, his back ramrod straight. You worthless boy, his mother shrieked, lunging at him to slap his face. Kaito caught her wrist firmly. Mother, this is not our home. Assault is illegal here. His mother froze, stunned by his newfound resolve. To all the teachers and students here, Kaito said, turning to the crowd, his voice ringing with clarity. These two are, indeed, my parents. But I did not run away with anyone, nor have I done anything immoral. I earned my place at this university through my own hard work, and I came here to start a new life. My student records are on file with the registrar's office. I have my acceptance notice and my identification right here. It was they, the people who claim to love me, who tried to steal my acceptance notice so that my dear brother could take my place. I was only able to escape that fate by changing my university preference at the last minute. He pulled the notice and his ID from his bag. This is my proof. As for the other woman they speak of, that is my mentor, Professor Yuzuki Abe. The entire faculty and student body can attest that our relationship has been nothing but professional. His father, red-faced with rage, bellowed, "Lies. You ran away." "Did I?" Kaito gave a cold laugh. "Then tell me, why would I have run? Was it because you planned for Naoki to steal my future? Was it because you wanted to use my skin for Naoki's graft? Or was it because you framed me for theft and had me sent to a work camp?" The crowd gasped, murmuring in shock seeing the tide turn. Naoki immediately feigned illness, collapsing to the ground. "Ah, my heart, it hurts." His mother instantly rushed to his side, her feigned grief replaced by genuine panic. Naoki, what's wrong? It's all your fault, you cursed jinx." The scene descended into chaos. The university administration promptly called the police. When the officers arrived, they took his parents away for questioning. Naoki, clutching his chest and complaining of pain, was sent to a nearby clinic, but not before shooting Kaito a look of pure hatred. After the crowd dispersed, Kaito realized his hands were shaking. A pair of warm, gentle hands enclosed his own. It was Yuzuki, who had been standing by his side the entire time. "It's over," she said softly. "You did very well." Kaito looked up at her, a sudden heat in his eyes. He was no longer the boy who could be tormented by anyone. Now, he had friends, he had a mentor, and he had a future that was his own. Hidden in the shade of a nearby tree, Ayako watched the entire scene unfold, the military-style cap in her hand crushed out of shape. She had assumed that without her, Kaito would be miserable. She had never imagined he would shine so brightly. What she couldn't accept was the way he looked at that other woman with a tenderness that had once belonged only to her. The lights of the police station were stark and unforgiving. Kaito's parents sat on a bench, their faces grim. An officer handed them an investigation report. "According to our findings, Naoki Tanaka's university acceptance notice was a forgery. The university discovered it upon his arrival and expelled him. Since then, he has been attending a pay-for-entry institution with no academic standing." "That's absurd," his mother shrieked, jumping to her feet and pointing a finger at the officer. "My son passed his exams. It must have been Kaito. He sabotaged him." The officer frowned and took a step back. "We have concrete evidence. You are free to review it yourselves." His father looked as if he'd been struck by lightning, collapsing back onto the bench. "No, it's not possible. We had everything arranged, and Naoki is so brilliant." The news spread through the city like wildfire. Neighbors who had once praised Naoki for his success were now whispering about the scandal. At the university, the students and faculty were outraged that such people would dare to harass one of their most promising students. In her office, Ayako stared at the same report, her fingers drumming a restless rhythm on her desk. The file detailed every aspect of Naoki's deception. Director Tachibana, "This has become a significant issue," her superior said with a sigh. "He is, after all, your fiancé's brother. The optics are not good." Ayako stood up abruptly. "I'm going to get to the bottom of this." In his hospital room, Naoki was propped up in bed. He saw Ayako enter and immediately put on a pitiful expression. "Ayako-san, why didn't you tell me you were expelled?" she asked, her voice as cold and sharp as glass. Naoki's fingers tightened on the bedsheet, and tears instantly welled in his eyes. "It was Big Brother. He framed me. I don't know how he did it, but he used that fake notice to trick me, then secretly changed his application and went to the university himself." He broke into sobs. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lie. I was scared of him. Ever since he burned my arm, I've had nightmares. Then he hired those men to attack me. I was terrified. I was afraid that if I exposed him, he would retaliate. I didn't dare say anything." Naoki threw himself into her arms, his body trembling, tears streaming down his face. "I was afraid that if I said anything bad about him, you would think I was trying to turn you against him. You've been so cold to me lately, Ayako-san. I was so scared. Please, believe me. I was so scared." Ayako looked at the man sobbing in her arms, and the familiar feeling of pity began to erode her suspicion. Naoki was so simple, so kind. How could he intentionally deceive anyone? It must have been a misunderstanding. She gently patted his back. Stop crying. I will handle it. Where she couldn't see him, a triumphant smile touched Naoki's lips, and his arms tightened around her. Ayako-san, you're the best to me. Ayako left the clinic and found herself standing in front of a newsstand. Once again, she saw the paper with Kaito's article. She stared at the author photo, a picture of Kaito looking calm and confident. The bio next to it read, Kaito Tanaka, distinguished student at the Faculty of Letters, a university, and columnist for the National Youth Literary Journal. She suddenly remembered a boy who used to follow her everywhere, a boy who would hold up his essays and ask shyly, Ayako-san, is my writing any good? What had she said back then? It's fine, she had replied without looking up from her work. Stop wasting your time on these useless things. Try to be more like your brother. Ayako's hand clenched, crumpling the newspaper in her fist. For the first time, she realized she had never truly known Kaito Tanaka. The boy she saw as a clingy, dependent follower was, in fact, a star in his own right, and now, that light was being cherished by another woman. Rain lashed against the windows of her office. Ayako's gaze was fixed on the mountain of paperwork on her desk, but her mind was elsewhere. Since the scandal about Naoki's fake credentials had broken, her superiors had called her in for 3 separate meetings, each one hinting that her personal affairs were reflecting poorly on the organization. She rubbed her temples and stood, walking over to a filing cabinet. As she pulled open a drawer, a small blue diary fell out, landing on the floor with a soft thud. She frowned, recognizing it as the one Naoki must have left behind on his last visit. She picked it up, intending to put it away, but a page fell open. Her own name, written in his familiar script, caught her eye. Against her better judgment, her fingers began to turn the pages. I made father and mother blame Kaito again today. All I have to do is cough a little, and they yell at him for leaving a window open. They never doubt me. The university application swap was a success. All I have to do is cry to Ayako-san, and she'll do anything for me. Still, I don't think she's good enough for me. Once I get to Tokyo, I'll meet so many better women. A man with my charm is destined for greatness. The watch Ayako-san gave me is fantastic. I hid it under Kaito's pillow on purpose. Seeing him get slapped for it, I almost laughed out loud. I can't stand that self-righteous act of his. It makes me sick. I burned my own arm, of course. I was hoping they'd take the skin from his face for the graft, but the doctors said no. I think Ayako-san still cares about him a little. But let's see if she still cares after I tell her he hired men to kill me. If I can't have something, he can't either. The pages trembled violently in Ayako's hand. She snapped the diary shut, her chest heaving. All the little details she had ignored for years suddenly slammed into focus. The flicker in Naoki's eyes whenever Kaito was wrongly accused, the fleeting, triumphant smirk he wore after every conflict her car tore through the rainy night. In the Tanaka family's living room, Naoki was admiring a new pair of leather shoes in the mirror. He saw Ayako burst in, soaked to the bone, and ran to greet her. Ayako-san, what are you doing here? What is this? Ayako threw the diary onto the coffee table, her voice raw. Naoki's face went white. He dropped to his knees with a thud. Ayako-san, let me explain. I don't know what that is. It must be Kaito. He must have written it to frame me. Kaito stole your diary, wrote all of this, and then planted it in my office to frame you. Ayako gave a cold, humorless laugh. Naoki, do I look like a fool? Naoki suddenly snatched a fruit knife from the table and pressed it against his own wrist. Why don't you believe me? If you won't believe me, I'll just die right here. Then you'll be satisfied. The blade pressed a red line into his pale skin. Ayako reacted instantly, wrenching the knife from his hand. Are you insane? I am insane, he cried, using the momentum to throw himself into her arms. I'm insane because I love you so much. All my life, you only ever looked at my brother. You were going to marry him. I had no other choice. Being held by the person she had cared for, hearing his confession, Ayako felt nothing but a profound chill. She stiffly pushed him away. We both need to calm down. The next morning, the National Youth Literary Journal published Kaito's latest work on its front page, a piece of non-fiction titled, The Stolen Life. The article detailed, with unflinching honesty, the entire story of his stolen university acceptance. It created a national sensation. An excerpt read, "Lying on the concrete floor of that disciplinary work camp, I finally understood a simple truth. Some people are born to live in the sun, while others must tear open the darkness with their own hands just to see the light." Yuzuki placed a glass of warm milk on Kaito's desk. "They've opened a formal investigation." Kaito looked out the window, where sunlight dappled through the leaves of the plane trees. "I don't care if they get punished or not. I wrote this for every person who has ever been bullied. To tell them that they can fight back." The morning at the university was supposed to be filled with the sound of students reading aloud, but this day was shrouded in a grim silence. As the first students arrived, they stopped dead in their tracks, shocked by what they saw plastered all over the walls of the main academic building. Dozens of posters, handwritten in lurid red ink. The headline, "A University's Kaito Tanaka, Seducing Female Teachers for Grades," was the most prominent, accompanied by a grainy, black and white photo. It was a poorly angled, clandestine shot of Kaito and Yuzuki talking in the library, cropped to be as suggestive as possible. "What on earth is this?" a girl whispered, covering her mouth. "Isn't that Kaito-senpai, the one who won the literary award?" "That's ridiculous," another student immediately shot back, reaching up to tear a poster down. "I'm in his class. He and Abe-sensei have always been completely professional." The news spread through the campus like a contagion. Kaito had just reached his dorm when his roommate pulled him inside. His roommate's face was red with anger, a torn half of a poster clutched in his hand. "Kaito, look at this. It has to be Naoki. I saw him skulking around campus yesterday." The vile words on the page felt like needles in Kaito's eyes. His fingers went cold, but he forced himself to remain calm. "It's all right. The truth will come out." Despite his words, a sharp pain lanced through his heart. He thought he had escaped the poison of that house, but he had underestimated the depths of Naoki's malice. "The truth will come out," his roommate stomped his foot. "This is slander. I'm going to the campus radio station right now and telling everyone the truth." "Wait," Kaito said, grabbing his arm. "Don't. The more emotional we get, the more we play into his hands. We need evidence, and we need a strategy." Just then, there was a soft knock on the door. Yuzuki stood outside, her expression more serious than usual. In her hands was a stack of the posters she had torn down herself. "I've had campus security secure the area. They're tracing the print source now." She looked at Kaito, her eyes showing not a flicker of doubt, only steadfast reassurance. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sensei," Kaito said, though his voice trembled slightly. "I just didn't think he would go this far. When they go this low, we must stand taller," she said, placing the posters on his desk and adjusting her glasses. "I have already contacted the university administration and the journal. We will issue a formal clarification. Rest assured, this university will not allow any of its students to be slandered like this." Her voice was a fortress, walling him off from the storm outside. His roommate nodded emphatically. "That's right. We all believe you, Kaito. You were in the library with me all afternoon yesterday, studying. When would you have had time for any of this? The people spreading these rumors are just jealous." The campus was quickly divided. Some were swayed by the posters, their gazes toward Kaito now tinged with suspicion. But many more were the students and teachers who actually knew him, the quiet boy who was always in the library, the confident author on the award stage, the helpful classmate. "I don't believe it for a second," a girl declared loudly in the cafeteria. "My essay was a mess, and he stayed up all night helping me find its weaknesses. I learned so much from him. That picture is from that night. I was there too, but they maliciously cropped it to be just the two of them. Abe-sensei was just being a good teacher." "Exactly. I saw him bring medicine to sensei once when she had a cold." "Since when is that a crime? Half of us have brought cold medicine to our teachers." A wave of support began to build, slowly drowning out the malicious whispers. His roommate dragged Kaito around campus, explaining the situation to anyone who would listen, even showing them Kaito's detailed schedule from the past few months. Every hour was accounted for with classes, library time, or work for the journal. There was simply no time for the sordid affairs the posters described. Yuzuki was even more direct. During her public lecture, in front of the entire department, she held up one of the original posters and systematically dismantled its lies. As Kaito Tanaka's teacher, I can state unequivocally that our interactions have been strictly limited to academic matters and a normal, supportive mentorship. This slander is not only an attack on a brilliant student, but an insult to the integrity of all educators. Her voice, amplified by the microphone, was firm and clear. The university has reported this matter to the police, who I trust will hold the person behind this accountable. But in the days that followed, the harassment escalated. The lock on Kaito's door was filled with glue, his textbooks were torn to shreds, and someone even stuffed a dead rat in his locker. The most dangerous incident happened one night when he was walking back to his dorm. Two masked men cornered him in a dark alley. Well, the great author. Someone paid us to teach you a lesson. The man advanced with a menacing grin, a steel pipe glinting in his hand. Kaito backed away until his back hit the cold brick wall. Just as the pipe was about to swing down, a figure charged into the alley run. Yuzuki threw her bag at one of the men's faces. In the split second of confusion, she grabbed Kaito's hand and pulled him into a desperate sprint. Her glasses fell to the ground, and the normally composed professor was anything but graceful. "Are you hurt?" she panted, her hands trembling as she checked him over. In the moonlight, Kaito saw the blood seeping from her scraped knuckles. He couldn't hold back any longer. He pulled her into a fierce, protective embrace. Yuzuki hugged him back just as tightly, her voice hoarse. "It's okay. I'm all right." "It was Naoki," Kaito said, his voice low, his fists clenched. "No one else would hate me this much." Yuzuki didn't speak, just gently patted his back. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. The university is here. We won't let him win." Her gaze was so resolute, it felt as if she had single-handedly shielded him from all the darkness in the world. When his roommate found out, he threw his arms around Kaito, furious. "This is too much. How can anyone be so evil?" "Don't worry, Kaito. From now on, I'm sticking to you like glue. Let's see anyone try to pull something now." For the next few days, his roommate was his shadow, even waiting outside the restroom for him. Yuzuki applied for temporary housing on campus and walked a patrol route around Kaito's dorm every night. A group of his classmates even formed a self-appointed guard detail, ensuring he was never alone when he went to the library or the journal's office. Naoki's plot had failed again. When the police tracked down the two thugs, it didn't take long for them to confess. They admitted they had been hired by Naoki Tanaka, who, desperate and out of options, had paid them with money he'd gotten from Ayako. When the news reached Kaito, he was standing at his dorm window, watching his friends walk together in the courtyard below. His eyes began to burn. He had thought he was alone, fighting against the world. He never imagined that in his darkest hour, so many people would stand firmly by his side. Naoki cowered on his small balcony, a cigarette trembling between his fingers, ash dusting his shoulders. He could hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching the apartment below. With each step, his heart hammered against his ribs. He knew. The police were here for him. The story of the two thugs he'd hired had come out. They had been arrested and had sung like canaries, even turning over the 10,000 yen hush money he'd given them, which they'd hidden in the soles of their shoes. "Naoki, pack your things, quickly." His mother burst into the room, shoving a cloth bundle at him. "Your father has arranged it. You'll go to your uncle's place in the countryside. Lie low until this blows over." "Lie low? Where am I supposed to go?" Naoki let out a shrill, unhinged laugh, his eyes shot with blood. Those two idiots. How could they mess up something so simple? After all that, he's still not ruined. "Why? I should have paid for professionals." His father paced the living room, frantically peering through the blinds. "Why isn't Ayako here yet?" If she would just say a word, the police would have to show some respect to her family. At the mention of Ayako, Naoki's expression went from frantic to bitter. He had gone to her yesterday, had knelt on the cold floor of her office, clinging to her leg and sobbing about how Kaito had driven him to this. He had begged her, for old time's sake, to help him one last time, but she had just looked at him with the cold eyes of a stranger. Her only words were, "You made this mess. You will take responsibility for it." "She's not coming," Naoki screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "She only cares about that bastard. I tried to destroy Kaito, so now she's destroying me." "Keep your voice down," his mother hissed, clamping a hand over his mouth. "Do you want to be arrested?" The footsteps outside were closer now, accompanied by low voices. Naoki shoved his mother away and scrambled for the bundle, making a break for the balcony. Their apartment was on the second floor. Below the balcony was a cluttered yard with an old locust tree whose branches reached up to the railing. "What are you doing?" his father cried. "I can't get caught." Naoki's voice was a choked sob, but his eyes were wild with determination. "If I go to prison, my life is over." He slung the bundle over his back and climbed onto the railing, reaching for the tree. The rough bark scraped his hands, and his thin plastic sandals offered no grip. His toes jammed in a crack in the trunk, sending a sharp pain up his leg, but he didn't stop. A firm knock echoed from the front door. "Is Naoki Tanaka home?" "This is the police. We're here with a warrant." His father stalled, fumbling with the lock. Naoki used the precious seconds to scramble onto a thick branch. He glanced down at the dark ground, a wave of dizziness washing over him. He squeezed his eyes shut and jumped. With a thud, he missed the soft patch of weeds he was aiming for and landed directly in the abandoned, rain-filled cistern in the corner of the yard. Splash. The water erupted, and the foul stench of stagnant mud filled his nostrils. He thrashed in the water. His sandals were gone, and a shard of broken glass underwater sliced open his ankle, but the filthy water pouring into his mouth kept him from screaming. The cistern wasn't deep, but the bottom was a slick mess of algae and rotten leaves. The more he struggled, the more he sank, cold water filling his lungs, his vision turning black. "Naoki," his mother screamed from the balcony, having seen his flailing hands. "Help!" Naoki fell into the cistern. His father ran out of the house barefoot, grabbed a long bamboo pole from the side of the house, and began jabbing it into the water. "Grab it! Grab on!" But Naoki was out of strength. His hand fluttered on the surface for a moment, then disappeared completely. By the time the police officers ran into the yard, it was a scene of pure chaos. Flashlight beams danced across the murky water, illuminating the ghostly pale faces of his parents. When they finally pulled Naoki out, his body was bloated and white, his lips a deep purple. He was long gone. The boy who had dreamed of crushing his brother, the boy who had tried to scheme his way to the top, had ended his short, twisted life in a fetid pool of water in his own backyard. Naoki's death was a stone dropped into a still pond, its ripples spreading outward. First, people lamented the loss of one so young. But as the full story of his crimes came to light, the whispers changed. He had died a coward, they said, trying to escape justice. The pity in their voices was replaced by a grim sense of comeuppance. Ayako received the news at her office. A subordinate handed her a slip of paper. She read it, her face unmoving, and after a long silence, she simply crumpled the note and dropped it in the trash. The sun was bright outside, but she felt an internal chill. The boy who had followed her around, calling her Ayako-san, the boy whose tears and smiles had once pulled at her heart, was gone. There was no sense of relief. Only a vast, hollow emptiness. Naoki's parents were destroyed. To lose a son in such a shameful way made it impossible for them to face their neighbors. People who had once fawned over Naoki now averted their eyes when they saw them. They sat in their silent house for days, staring at Naoki's empty room, before finally breaking down, their grief raw and absolute. "It was our fault. We spoiled him," his mother wailed, beating her chest. "If we hadn't been so biased, if we hadn't helped him cheat Kaito, what's the use of saying that now?" his father said, his eyes vacant. "We failed Naoki. And we failed Kaito even more." In their despair, they saw only one path forward. Perhaps if they could earn Kaito's forgiveness, they could find some semblance of peace. That afternoon, they arrived at the university gate, their backs bent with age and sorrow. They wore faded, old clothes, their haggard faces a stark contrast to the vibrant young students all around them. The guard stopped them. The mother nearly fell to her knees. "Please, sir, we're here to see Kaito Tanaka. He's our son." The guard, weary of their pleading, eventually sent a message for Kaito. His roommate was furious. "What? They have the nerve to show their faces here?" "Kaito, ignore them." Yuzuki frowned. "Do you want me to handle this?" Kaito put down his book. After a long moment of silence, he shook his head. "No. I'll see them." Some things needed a final, proper ending. Under the old locust tree by the gate, his parents saw him approach, and their eyes immediately reddened. His mother rushed forward to grab his hand, but Kaito smoothly sidestepped her. "Kaito," she sobbed. Are you well?" He looked at the two faces before him, so familiar yet so alien, and felt a surprising calm. The anger he expected to feel simply wasn't there. He remembered them not shedding a single tear when he died in his past life. He remembered his father wanting to send him to a work camp for a crime he didn't commit. He remembered his mother seeing his bleeding shoulder and only having eyes for Naoki's minor scrape. "Whether I am well or not," he said, his voice flat, "is no longer any of your concern." His father's lips trembled. He pulled a cloth-wrapped bundle from his pocket and held it out. "Kaito, this is money we saved for you. For your living expenses. We know we were wrong. We truly know. Can you just give us one more chance?" The bundle was heavy, filled with coins and small bills. "That won't be necessary. My writing provides for me now," Kaito said, not taking it. He gave a small, sad smile. "As for forgiveness, when you pushed me into the abyss, did you ever imagine this day would come?" His mother broke down completely. "We were wrong. Kaito, we were so wrong. He's gone. Can't you find it in your heart, for the sake of us being your parents, my parents?" Kaito repeated the words, a flicker of emotion finally breaking his composure. "In your hearts, when did you ever once treat me as your son? I will not forgive you. Some wounds cannot be healed with a simple 'I'm sorry.'" With that, he turned and walked back into the university, never once looking back. Ayako had just returned from patrol when she was stopped by the guard at the gate. "Director Tachibana, there are two people here to see you. They claim to be relatives. They're causing quite a scene." Ayako frowned. She had no such relatives. But when she saw who it was, her heart sank. It was Kaito's parents, their shoulders slumped, their faces set with a grim determination. "Ayako Tachibana, you heartless woman," the mother shrieked, her voice raw. "We entrusted our son to you, and you destroyed him." A few soldiers passing by slowed their pace, their curiosity piqued. Ayako's face hardened. "What is this? Come inside and talk." "Inside," the father said, puffing out his chest. "No, we'll say it right here. We want everyone to hear how Director Tachibana stole my older son's university acceptance and gave it to my younger son." "What?" The soldiers nearby gasped, breaking into hushed whispers. Ayako felt the blood rush to her head. "What nonsense are you talking about? Get inside now." She tried to grab the father's arm, but he shoved her away. The mother promptly sat on the ground, wailing and slapping her thighs. "Oh, the heavens have abandoned us. What has our family done to deserve this? Our daughter-in-law steals one son's future for the other. Is there no justice in this world?" When Kaito passed his exams, "This woman conspired with Naoki," the father shouted. "She hid the real acceptance notice and gave Kaito a forgery. We were blind then, we helped them trick Kaito, but we see our mistake now. She was the mastermind. She ruined Kaito's future so Naoki could go to university. Now Naoki is gone, and we have nothing left to live for. We'll die right here, at the gate of your headquarters." As she spoke, the mother lunged toward the wall, as if to dash her head against it. The nearby soldiers quickly restrained her. The entire compound was now in an uproar. Ayako's superiors rushed to the scene. Seeing the spectacle, their faces grew grim. "Ayako, what is the meaning of this?" the commanding officer asked sternly. Ayako stood stiffly, her lips pressed into a thin line, her face flushing and paling by turns. She couldn't say a word. Everything they were saying, every last word, was a whip cracking against her skin. "Sir, you must help us," the mother cried, seeing the commanding officer. "Just because she's a director, does that mean she is above the law? If she hadn't swapped those notices, our Kaito would be a university student now. He wouldn't have suffered so much. We wronged our son, and we've come to confess our sins," the father wept. "But the root of this entire tragedy is Ayako Tachibana. Without her, none of this would have happened." The crowd of onlookers grew. Every eye felt like a needle, piercing Ayako's composure. The once proud, formidable young director now stood there, utterly humiliated, unable to even lift her head. "Get them to an office, now," the officer ordered a guard, his brow deeply furrowed. Inside the office, Kaito's parents recounted the entire story, how Ayako had bribed the post office, how she'd presented the fake notice, and how she had manipulated Kaito into an early marriage. "We know we were wrong. We shouldn't have been so biased. We shouldn't have helped Naoki, the father said, his eyes filled with tears. But Ayako was the one behind it all. It was her plan. Ayako stood to the side, listening as her sordid past was laid bare, a wave of shame washing over her. She had thought her plan was perfect. She had never imagined it would be exposed like this, by the very people who had been her co-conspirators. The commanding officer's face was dark as a thundercloud. He looked at Ayako and shook his head in disappointment. Ayako, how could you do something like this? This isn't just a matter of personal conduct. This is a fundamental breach of principle. Ayako opened her mouth, but no words came out. An apology? An explanation? In the face of these facts, any words would be meaningless. Given your past service record, you will not be detained, the officer sighed. However, a punishment is unavoidable. You have abused your authority and brought extreme dishonor upon this organization. I will be recommending a formal demerit on your record and a public censure to be circulated throughout the entire district. Ayoko's head snapped up. A formal demerit. It meant her career, her years of hard work, her entire future was likely ruined. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, but the officer's severe gaze silenced her. Having achieved their goal, Kaito's parents stopped crying. They sat with their heads bowed, looking like wilted vegetables. Their public shaming of Ayako was partly an act of atonement, and partly an act of revenge. But hearing the final decision, a sliver of unease crept into their hearts. We'll be going now, the father stammered. The officer waved a hand, and a guard escorted them out. Only Ayako and the officer remained. Get your house in order, director, he said, patting her shoulder with a heavy finality. Reflect on what you've done. From now on, try to live up to the uniform you wear. Try to live with a clear conscience. Ayako snapped to attention and gave a sharp salute, her voice hoarse. Yes, sir. Stepping out of the office, the sunlight was blinding, but Ayako felt a chill that went straight to her bones. She looked up at the sky. This place that had once seemed to hold limitless possibilities for her now felt like a cage. The formal demerit came down quickly, along with the public censure. Ayoko's name became a cautionary tale. The subordinates who had once revered her now avoided her gaze, their eyes filled with contempt. Her career was over. Promotion was unthinkable. She would be lucky to keep her current position. The daily humiliation was worse than any battle she had ever fought, and Kaito, oblivious to all of this, was busy. He was preparing for his final exams, sitting in the library, surrounded by books. Sunlight streamed through the window, bathing him in a golden glow. Yuzuki sat across from him, a small smile on her face as she watched him work. Kaito, are you ready for your exams? He looked up, his eyes shining with confidence. Yes, sensei. I am. His life had not been defined by the shadows of his past. Instead, through his own efforts and the support of those who truly cared for him, it had become brighter than he had ever imagined. His articles were published regularly, his grades were at the top of his class, and he was admired by his teachers and peers. He didn't know that far away, the woman who had once held his fate in her hands was now paying a heavy price for her actions. For Kaito, the past was the past. The pain and betrayal had become the soil in which his new life had grown. His future was his own, filled with infinite possibility. And Ayako Tachibana was nothing more than a ghost he had long since left behind. Late summer, the buzz of cicadas still hanging in the air. Kaito emerged from the literature department office, a stack of manuscripts in his arms, and ran straight into Yuzuki, who was carrying a pile of teaching plans, the papers scattered across the floor. As Yuzuki knelt to pick them up, her black-rimmed glasses slipped down her nose. Kaito saw her fumbling, and a laugh escaped him. The sound startled a sparrow from a nearby plane tree. Yuzuki looked up, and her eyes met the light in his. As his graduation approached, these accidental encounters became more frequent. Sometimes in a hallway, sometimes in the line for the cafeteria, where Yuzuki would blush as she slipped an extra salted duck egg into his lunchbox, murmuring, "You're too thin." One autumn evening, Kaito waited for Yuzuki outside the faculty dormitory. He had graduated and rented a small apartment nearby, working for a newspaper, but he still came back to campus to see his old roommate, who was now a graduate assistant. More importantly, he came back for her. The wind swirled golden leaves around his feet. He clutched the latest copy of youth literature, which contained his newest story. His fingers trembled slightly. The lights in the dormitory came on, one by one. Finally, he saw her familiar figure hurrying toward him. "Kaito, I'm so sorry, I was held up grading papers." Before she could finish, he had thrust the magazine into her hands. Yuzuki traced his name on the cover, her expression unreadable. Then, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, oil paper packet. She unwrapped it layer by layer, revealing a single, cracked piece of fruit hard candy. "My mother brought this from Shanghai. I've been saving it. I thought you might like it." She looked up at him. "Kaito, you've graduated now. We are no longer bound by the roles of teacher and student. Perhaps you would be willing to start a new chapter with me." The setting sun stretched their shadows long across the ground. The candy wrapper glowed softly in the twilight. As the sweetness melted on his tongue, Kaito could hear his own heart beating. "Yes," he said. The next spring, the magnolias on campus were in full bloom. Yuzuki led Kaito to the small hill behind the university, where the wild azaleas were a riot of fiery red. She suddenly produced a small, red silk pouch. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with a tiny cotton flower. "Kaito, I don't have much money. I had the old blacksmith in town make this." Before she could say more, he pulled her into a tight embrace, his tears soaking the front of her faded blue blouse. The wedding was set for New Year's Day, 1988. The hall was simply decorated with paper chains and streamers. A few of his friends from a university band played a cheerful tune. Kaito, wearing a crisp suit sent by Yuzuki's mother, was about to toast his guests when a commotion erupted outside. "Kaito, we're your parents." His mother's shrill voice cut through the happy noise. "Let us in. We raised you. How can you do this to us?" His father's voice added, full of desperation. "We know we were wrong, but you never said anything. We've already admitted our mistake." Kaito's hand tightened around his glass. Through the window, he could see two stooped figures struggling with the ushers. His father's suit was worn shiny at the elbows. His mother's hair was a mess, with bits of straw caught in it, and a smudge of dirt on her cheek. They looked like they had wandered in from a construction site. The guests began to whisper, "You've got to be kidding me. How do they have the nerve to show up? They were the ones who were so cruel to him. Now that he's famous, they come crawling back, trying to guilt-trip him. Someone should call the police and have them removed." Yuzuki started to move toward the door, but Kaito gently placed a hand on her arm. He straightened his shoulders and walked to the entrance, the winter sun casting a warm glow on him. "The day you cast me into the abyss, you should have known this day would come," he said, his voice calm, his eyes holding no trace of pity for the two people outside. He turned his back on them. As he walked away, he heard his mother's heartbroken wail, but he never slowed his pace. "We told you we were sorry. Why are you so heartless? We are your family, bound by blood. We even went to Ayako Tachibana for you. We got your revenge. Why won't you forgive us? We were right about you from the beginning. You're an ungrateful wolf. I should have drowned you the day you were born." Two policemen quickly moved in, covering their mouths and escorting them away, giving Kaito and Yuzuki a respectful nod. "Mr. Tanaka, Mrs. Abe, our apologies. We'll take care of this disturbance." The couple's muffled cries were quickly drowned out by the cheers of the wedding guests, who tactfully ignored the interruption and raised their glasses in celebration. At the very back of the crowd, standing under a barren plane tree, stood Ayako Tachibana. She wore a faded, old military-style uniform. She watched the groom, radiant under the lights of the hall, and remembered a little boy who had followed her everywhere, the boy who had pressed a protective charm into her hand and said, "Ayako-san, this will keep you safe." The wind kicked up a swirl of dead leaves. She raised a hand in a slow, tired salute, then turned and vanished into the twilight. After the wedding, Kaito's creativity flourished. His work appeared in one prestigious literary journal after another. The royalty checks arrived like snow in winter. Yuzuki continued to teach at the university. During school holidays, she would accompany him on research trips to the countryside. They lived in a small, cramped apartment, but it was filled with life and warmth. Whenever Kaito worked late into the night, Yuzuki would quietly place a cup of strong tea and a plate of toasted, golden brown bread by his side. As for Ayako, after Kaito's wedding, she requested a transfer to a remote outpost in the northwest. She could no longer bear to be in a city so full of memories. The harsh desert winds quickly weathered her sharp edges, and the back that was once so straight beneath her uniform began to curve. Her comrades often saw her staring at a small charm she wore around her neck. It was the one Kaito had gotten for her at a temple fair when he was 10. The red string was faded, the paper inside brittle and yellowed. It was the only thing of his she had left. In the late autumn of 1991, a package from the border region arrived for Kaito. The delivery man looked at him with a pained expression and sighed deeply. Director Tachibana sacrificed her life in the line of duty, defending our country. She asked a comrade to send this to you before she passed. My condolences. With trembling hands, Kaito took the package. Inside the yellowed envelope were a few unposted letters and the faded protective charm. The writing on the letters was smudged, as if by tears. The last page read, "Kaito, I dare not ask for your forgiveness. I only hope that you are living a good life." He opened his mouth to speak, but a tear fell first. The memories of his past life came flooding back, vivid and painful. The person who had caused all his suffering was now gone. Their final encounters had all been so graceless, so full of bitterness. Another tear splashed onto the charm. He suddenly remembered being a little boy, and Ayako carrying him on her back to see an outdoor movie. He didn't know when, exactly, the big sister who protected him and cared for him had started to let her heart stray. Yuzuki gently wiped the tears from his face and put her arm around his shoulder. It's all in the past now. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, as if to bury all the old grudges and sorrows. 3 months later, Kaito wrote the dedication for his new book. Life may be filled with hardship, but in the end, it will fade, becoming the light that illuminates the path ahead. The following spring, his publisher held a launch party for the new book. Outside the venue, 2 figures in ragged clothes lingered in the crowd. Through the glass, Kaito's parents watched their radiant, successful son on the stage, their eyes full of regret, their vision blurred by tears. Inside, Kaito held Yuzuki's hand, answering questions from reporters. Outside the window, the magnolia trees were in full bloom, and the spring breeze was filled with the scent of hope. Years later, in a small military cemetery on a remote border, a simple, unadorned gravestone would always have a fresh bouquet of wild azaleas placed before it. Some said they were sent every year by a famous author. As for why, only the spring wind knew. And in a small courtyard in the city, Kaito and Yuzuki sat under a grape arbor, looking through old, yellowed photographs. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, illuminating the fine lines around their eyes. Their life was quiet, their world at peace.